Hello, I'm Jen Uphoff-Gray, founder and artistic director of Forward Theater Company in Madison, Wisconsin. And this is Theater Forward, a monthly conversation about theater from a local, regional, and national perspective. From Madison to Manhattan, we're excited to share insights into our own company while exploring issues surrounding theater in the Midwest and around the country. Welcome to episode 124 of Theater Forward. And in this episode, I am joined by two of my favorite Wisconsin artists, Marcella Kearns and Jake Penner. You've heard both of them on this podcast in past episodes, but not at the same time. And we are bringing their Wonder Twin powers together for a really special opportunity to talk about directing, and specifically about directing the work of one of our most thrilling contemporary playwrights, Martyna Majok. Welcome, Marcella and Jake.
Thanks, Jen. Great to be here. The season of Majok.
Season of Majok. We're going to start with some basic introduction. So, Marcella, you've been the artistic associate at Forward Theater since 2022. Very lucky me. You've worked as an actor, director, dramaturg, educator all over Wisconsin and all over the country. And later this season, you will make your Forward main stage directing debut with Majok's 2015 play Ironbound. And then Jake, you have directed many times for Forward and for 3 years served as artistic associate at American Players Theater, where you directed the premiere of Aaron Posner's Anton Shorts. And as we record this conversation, you are in rehearsals at Next Act Theater in Milwaukee with Majok's Sanctuary City. And so with two plays, very different plays by this exciting playwright happening in Wisconsin this season, I just couldn't resist the chance to hear you two talk about how you are approaching her work. This is a very exciting confluence of events for Wisconsin and regional theater goers. Marcy, before we dive into some of the directing aspects of this, can you just start us off telling us a little bit about Majok and her career so far?
Just a little. I have to jump in with some Polish pride here. She is a Polish American. She immigrated to this country when I think she was 5. Her mother brought her here. And she grew up in New Jersey. She grew up in North New Jersey. So that'll figure into the plays we talk about today. She was really pulled to writing and wrote some things when she was in school that she tells stories about now. She had to go back to school and say they were stories because at the time, some of the things she was writing about were things that were happening at home, and it would have been actually dangerous. She says it might have criminalized her family. And so she is coming from a working class immigrant experience in order to forward her work. She got pulled to writing, and her mom told her she really was hoping that she would get a real job. But, flash forward many years later, she's won the Pulitzer in 2018 for Cost of Living. I think she went both to Yale and Juilliard. She's won a lot of awards, and she's a really hot play right now. Sanctuary City, Ironbound, Cost of Living. And I think it was first in 2018 that Queens hit the stage, but Queens is going to be off Broadway this fall in October. So she's a playwright of the moment.
I love that. So now let's launch into how you two are engaging with this playwright as directors. And I'm curious about what you are each keying into specifically with her voice. I'm curious to see in the ways in which you overlap or don't in what you see and love in her storytelling. So Jake, I'll toss it to you first.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I can't say enough good things about Majok's technical ability to capture dialogue in a naturalistic sense. But I also want to qualify that by saying that it isn't just her ability to be truthfully colloquial the way that I think we all, or at least I really respond to in contemporary playwrights, but it also manages to be deeply poetic when she does it and truthful about what it is that is going on in a revealing sense, emotionally, psychologically, relationally with these characters that we get to know really, really well just through the dialogue. And that's really one aspect of what it is that she's doing. I absolutely love this writer's ability to balance the extremes within one piece of of literature that she's written. She is both poetic and profane. She is both dealing with highly political and sociological issues while also driving deep into a personal and immediate and vulnerable dynamic between two people, or one character with themselves. Um, and I love that she never lets you walk away from a performance feeling like you have a clean takeaway. There is no clean, there is no didactic, there is no prescriptive from this writer. You will walk away saying, I think it's about this. I'm pretty sure it's about this. I feel in my heart, though, connected to this aspect of this play. And that's been my experience, both reading her work and now just a couple of days into rehearsal here at Next Act Theater in Milwaukee. Yeah, I'm not surprised that she's had this meteoric rise within the theater community in the U.S. I feel like she's right on the cusp of becoming one of those household theater names that is not dissimilar from Lauren Gunderson. When we first worked with her 10 years ago on Silent Sky at Forward Theater, she was right on that cusp. We saw a similar thing happen with Sam Hunter maybe 5-6 years ago when we got to interview him, and all of a sudden he's on the Oscar stage, and Martyna is not far behind.
Yeah. Marcy, how about you? What draws you to her voice?
She is a champion of the invisible. So that it's overt. She will say, I'm writing about poor people. I'm writing about class. The play that I'm working on, she wrote really to reflect her mother's experience, and also because she was dissatisfied with the dearth of working class female characters in contemporary plays. So I echo Jake first in that I think her language is exquisite. It's like an onion, the things that you can think of, you start peeling it away and there's layers after layers. But I also, I think more than anything, appreciate the class questions. She herself will talk about how the America, I was listening to an interview. She said America tries to sell itself as something to the people coming here, and it's not that. It's hard. It's much harder, which is no surprise to anybody. But the fact that she puts it on stage for us to see can sometimes be a more visceral and vital and open experience than reading another article about the challenges that immigrants and working class humans have in this country.
Yeah, I want to go back to a couple of things that you said, but let's go in reverse order. Doing these plays right now in the fall of 2025, right in this particular moment, Jake, with Sanctuary City, and Marcella, to start in January of 2026, America's semi-quincentennial 250th year, with Ironbound and the story of immigration. What is it about these plays in this moment? What feels right or terrifying about engaging with these stories?
Marcy, do you mind?
Go for it.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, Jen. It is a balance of terrifying and right. I mean, I sort of said this when I addressed we had a bit of a crowd for our first day of rehearsal back on Tuesday here at Next Act. And I said that, normally when you are working on a contemporary play and it happens to be threaded with some driving force that is alive within the cultural conversation around the play, it's sort of a cause for quiet celebration typically, because what it means is that more people are likely to come to the play as more people are out there around in the theater community, in the community around wherever the theater happens to be, who are trying to organize their thinking about this issue. And that is no different from what is going on with Sanctuary City, which, by the way, if you're not intimately familiar with the play, that title, Sanctuary City, is in reference to the undocumented immigrant experience in the U.S. Your suspicions are correct. That is what the play is about in some level. But I don't think any of us are happy about the fact that this issue is so potent in the discourse right now. However, I think a lot of us are grateful that people are going to gravitate toward the theater based on that title, based on the description, based on what they're able to hear about the play through word of mouth, because they understand that we are going to be taking that prism and shifting it around in the light so that we can see it from all of these different angles, the way that I think Martyna is so gifted at. Um, uh, with that said, it makes me feel a tremendous amount of pressure for no other reason that I really, really, really want to get this right. And so my personal experience can only sort of walk me up to a point, but thankfully Martyna is drawing some from her own direct experience. As far as I know, she was not of an undocumented immigration status at any point. However, is pretty candid in interviews about the fact that she grew up within a community where this story that we see in Sanctuary City is in no way atypical. And so I can trust her writing that if we do it to the letter, that we'll at least capture some bit of truth that she's able to relate to us via the page. And then we have a tremendous design team who are also completely on board with us doing the play exactly as written, which for those of you who don't spend your lives doing contemporary theater, doing the play as written is actually harder than you may think. And
True.
so we've taken on that challenge for sure. But with that said, like I was saying earlier, like I think that at least the play that I'm working on, there are elements of it that you personally are going to hook into and say, you know what, I don't know that anybody else saw this in this play, but I sure did. And so that's the thing that I am grabbing hold of and saying that is what is speaking truth to me and reflecting back to me some aspect of my experience that is drawing me closer and closer to these characters that are just by virtue of their status difficult to know in our daily lives, and for good reason. They're not out in the open typically, but this play does that. It puts them front and center with very little scenic elements around them and says, here's a real person going through this. Get to know them, please.
Yeah. Additional thoughts to add, Marcy?
I was just remembering, I feel like Newark reaffirmed, after executive orders in January, I think Newark reaffirmed its status as a sanctuary city. I might be mistaken, but there's something in my mind that's tripping on that just a little bit. So
that's where Ironbound is set.
Yeah, actually, in the Ironbound is an area right around Newark. It's close to Carney Sopranos land, which I think where our playwright in part grew up, I believe. It's and close to Elizabeth. So right in the heart of North Jersey. Yeah, absolutely. I think what I would add, I'm particularly excited about Ironbound because in our literary committee at Forward, we are screening plays that we will consider for our season, potentially. And one question that comes up quite a bit when we look at plays that deal with a very specific ethnicity is this playwright allowing room for, or is this playwright deliberately saying this can be any ethnicity, which is something that Sanctuary City does? Or is this playwright delving very specifically into one and allowing us to try to see the universal through the specific? And what I love is that Sanctuary City, like I said, allows for more open casting, and Ironbound is very specifically Polish, but at least the way that we're going about it, there's something universal about the immigrant experience to the United States. But by virtue of being able to connect with a woman who is Eastern European, that is a story we don't see as often, part of her purpose. But it's also something that I'm particularly excited about because being half Slav and half Polish, I really see my own culture within this play without it being hit over the head. It's present. I see how my own ancestral culture behaves and operates within this situation.
Yeah, what you're saying there, Marcy, and seeing yourself and tying back to something you said as well, Jake, about the excitement when you're doing a contemporary play and it feels unexpectedly, perhaps, immediate because of what's going on in the world. We've encountered that quite a few times at Forward.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've talked about in the office as we prepare for the marketing and for the community engagement programming around Ironbound, we're always looking at every play that we do and saying, is the subject matter here something that might be specifically cathartic for some segment of our community that may or may not always come to the theater? And if so, is there a way that we can share this experience, invite folks in to have this opportunity to see themselves on stage, right? And the moment we are in, which is not necessarily the moment we thought we would be in when we chose the play, is a moment where it doesn't feel safe for our community to say, hey, if you're part of an immigrant population, documented or undocumented, come and see a story about someone experiencing maybe things that you have experienced, because who knows what risks those members of our community might be putting themselves in to gather in that way. And that's super upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, we're sort of in this uptick of a nationalist perspective, and
Yeah.
I do think that, like you're saying, regardless of immigration status for any given person, I have to believe that this is on people's minds. Even if you are of a background where you're born here, have official citizenship status here. I think the experience of being in a big crowd of people must be very strange at the moment, because you don't quite know who's looking at you a certain way or not. And I do think that this writer is conscious of that, and I think that well before the current moment that we're in, I think this is sort of a recent thing now, and she's been writing for the last 10 years at this high level, and is starting to tell stories, Marcy, like you're saying, that have been centered around a community of people, particularly young Eastern European women, that are maybe not as visible in the culture as some other identities. With that said, I do think she's kind of kicked open a door, and I would expect more stories of Eastern European women to start following in her in the example that she's setting.
Mm-hmm.
And to go back to Sanctuary City, I mean, she's built this play in such a way that you can really cast the two characters at the center of the story, a male and female, B and G. The letters B and G are their names, and in any way at all from any community. The one prescription that she's asked for is that they be actors, the actual people be of a country of origin. How does she phrase it? That is of less liberalism with its approach to same-sex marriage, which comes up later on in the play, so that at least we see that these two people are coming from a background that may not be as progressive about this issue. That's a really important structural conceit to the story. But yeah, no, she's doing a tremendous amount of work and being able to pull people into storytelling that I've not seen other writers do before. Actually, she's able to construct a story in such a way that you can plug different identities into it, and the story not only still works, but might work in a slightly different, revealing way without breaking anything. That is real genius.
Yeah. Can I jump on something that you said there too, regarding the history of the legality of same-sex marriage in our country, and jumping back to the semi-quincentennial question or thought. One of the lovely things about especially both of these plays is that we are experiencing the backdrop of the early 21st century, the late 20th and early 21st century. So she's writing about giant things that are happening in U.S. history, but they're very much in the background. And what we're seeing is we're putting the microscope on how it's affecting people. In Ironbound, we've got it jumps between 1992 all the way to 2014. So what we see is actually the effects. There's a lot of question about how much effect NAFTA really did have on outsourcing jobs outside the country. But the fact remains that over the course of time, we see jobs outsourced. We see a factory broken down over the course of the timeline that Ironbound is on, and so there are things that we have experienced that we know, immigrants or not, that are part of who we are as Americans, especially in the 21st century, that she has a laser focus on. But you don't need to know everything about it in order to take in how it's affecting the humans right in front of you.
Can we go a little more into that? And as you've both said, the fact that like Sam Hunter, who's already come up in this conversation, this playwright takes a really personal interest in the lives of the marginalized, and in lots of different forms: disability, immigrant status, working class status, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot about making quote unquote invisible members of our community visible on stage. And that requires a lot of everyone working on these plays, as well as of the audiences. And I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, my first, if you don't mind my jumping in,
please,
really quickly here, I would like to lift up Renaissance Theater Works' production of Cost of Living. That was actually my first experience with this playwright's work. The extent to which Renaissance Theater Works not only operated to make their production accessible for their audiences, but also to bring in a team that truly reflected a population within the play, was extraordinary. So it still is one of the most extraordinary productions that I've seen for many reasons, but especially for that, for how strong a connection to audience the theater itself tried to craft. I'll stop there for the moment.
The question of
got me.
we should not tip our hat here. We all got scooped by Renaissance Theater when it comes to Ms. Majok.
Right.
That was a fantastic show. Yeah. And I think that I wonder about this designation though of marginalized through her perspective, through Marta, because to me it doesn't seem like I wonder if she's even thinking about it in those terms. I mean, she's looking at a good, interesting, unique story and saying, well, this works. And she's exploring it to its fullest extent. And I've seen, a couple of different versions of this play, Sanctuary City. And there's never a sense that these characters feel bad for themselves. And in fact, I think that she even puts in the script in their playwright's note at the very beginning of the script that please don't play this. I'm going to paraphrase this in not a helpful way, but she says, don't play these characters with any degree of self-pity that has no currency in their world. And I can tell you now, having spent a couple of days at the table, if I know that this is an industry podcast and most people are familiar with table work, but if you're not, it's when the team sits around a table and we basically dice up really finely every aspect of the play and talk about it and make sure we're all on the same page. When you do start to play around with some of this dialogue in a self-pitying way, all of a sudden the bottom falls out of it. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
So I suppose if I was speaking to Martina, I would ask her outright, like, do you see these people as marginalized, or is this just a unique aspect of the experience that you're just pulling a little bit further into the forefront? Because she seems to approach them with absolutely no judgment or coloring of any kind. And it's really refreshing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Talk a little bit, building off of that, some of the challenges that you find as a director engaging with her work. Jake, you're already in the thick of it. Marcy, I know you're in the planning stages, but what are some of the challenges for you as directors?
Sure. Marcy?
My ancestors are far enough from immigration now that I think I'll speak to something you said earlier, Jake. I can only take experience up so far. I spent part of my childhood in a trailer home, child of an Air Force pilot. But I think that my experience has been so much more privileged in so many ways. So that's where imagination and empathy needs to come into play. I think that's maybe my biggest challenge. But the thing that I am very close to is the experience of a woman who will do anything for the person that she loves. And in Ironbound, it's very specifically one person, and yet it's a love story. For more, I don't want to spoil too much. Right? Yeah, I think I'll leave. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing.
I will spoil a little something. Not too bad though. I can't really talk about the challenges without talking about the technical challenges of Zank City. In that, like, okay, it's split into two parts. I'm reluctant to call them Act 1 and Act 2 because I don't think that's actually what's happening. To me, they feel like two distinct plays separated by 3 years. But the first part, Martina has asked that you stage this with your 2 actors and no set on a bare stage. And we don't see any props or any miming apart from 2 very intentional and specific moments. And yet there's dialogue that suggests that physicalization of some kind is happening in some of the scenes. And so immediately you go, okay, how do Playwright has said this thing at the very top of the piece. But she can't possibly be asking for that, right? But the minute you start to think through breaking her note and introducing more props or a citable of some kind or having them mime something, all of a sudden it pulls the impact out of those 2 moments that she's asked for you to actually break her one rule. And it begins to chip away, I think, at a couple of different thematic elements and a conceit that I think allows for us to understand what is even happening in the first part of the play, which is that she's playing with memory, and memory years and decades on begin to lose their potency around the detritus and the details of a memory. And what ends up sticking with you is what was actually important about that moment, who was actually important about that moment, and how they made you feel. And so to strip away all of these other elements is to focus you on, okay, this person doing the remembering is remembering this for this specific reason. File that away because that's going to be important later. And the minute you start to introduce these other elements, it stops working. So yeah, the challenge as we begin to get on our feet today for the first time is going to be, can we play solidly within that constraint that Martina has given us? I think we can. That's always been my approach in thinking theoretically about today. But my guess is there will be some interesting problems to solve.
How exciting. How exciting. That makes me think of the description in Ironbound. What is it specifically? This world is one of constant less. And there's a similar technical challenge for Ironbound in that we jump back and forth on a timeline. So time, how you play time within the space, within the world you've created is,
She is really playing with time. I mean, most writers are playing with time, but she's taking time and saying, well, let's really mess with this. And it's been exciting. It's been exciting to drop that element in and use everything I know about how to play with time in the theater. And it's still not enough. I mean, I feel like I'm going to learn a lot about how to do that just from this process now.
I'm so excited to see both of these plays. So as we near wrapping this conversation up, one thing that we haven't really engaged with yet that is one of my personal favorite elements of both of these plays that deal with some incredible challenges for these characters is that there's so much humor.
Yeah.
She is very funny playwright. And I'm wondering if you can just chat about that a little bit.
I was listening to an interview in which she said that one of her friends calls her plays "Hear Me Out" plays because the content is so raw, and the characters are going through so much that at first you might want to hold it at arm's length, but hear me out. but they're exceedingly hilarious, and that was one of the things that I really connected with personally. That humor is a survival tactic,
Yeah.
but it's also one of the most potent survival tactics and ways of being, regardless of need.
Yeah, I mean, the humor, I think, makes the hard tolerable for these characters, as it does in life sometimes. And we learned through our first read through with a small audience that you can't overdo the humor. It can all be funny and it'll still work just fine. And then, of course, I go and cast somebody like Ashley Oviedo, who's wringing every drop of humor out of these lines in unexpected places, and it's still functioning really well. So I have a feeling that's going to be our next 2.5 weeks is all of the things we're having to explore. I think what is funny about this play, and what is potentially funny about this play if we really push, is going to be first and foremost for us. I'm challenging my cast to break it with more humor than we need to, and then we'll pull back.
It's one of the best ways to engage with somebody who may not be ready to listen. Mm-hmm. Humor, I don't want to say neutralizes, but humor disarms. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of her best tools in that regard. Our hearts crack open when we get to laugh. We like someone when we get to laugh, and we care more about who they are and where they're going.
Agreed. And I'll go the other direction with it, Marcy. I think that humor is a way to test people a little bit. I think that where humor is, intelligence is. And so when we get deep into the conflict in the second part of Sanctuary City, there is some insulting that happens between characters, but it's dipped in a little bit of a humorous coating. And I think it's there because character one is trying to figure out what character two actually thinks about this thing that character one has just said, and how are you interpreting this, and are you catching what's funny about this? Even though I'm insulting you, I'm doing it in a creative way. Do you see that too? Oh, she does. I got a real opponent here.
Any last things that you want to that I haven't asked you about yet that you want to share in your thoughts about these two beautiful plays and the work that you're doing?
I just hope I get a chance to meet her someday.
Me too.
She's, as somebody who scribbles a little bit in their spare time and doesn't aspire to do what Martyna does at the level that she does. I have such admiration for her. And she says this absolutely infuriating thing in interviews where she dislikes writing, which I understand, which most writers understand, but not somebody with this otherworldly level of talent. It's so frustrating to hear her say that.
I think I just want to say dzień dobry to all my Polish people out there.
Beautiful. Well, as we wrap up, I hope that everyone listening has had their appetite whetted to see some of Majok's work. And if you are in the Midwest, come see Sanctuary City at Next Act Theater. It's running September 10th through October 5th. And then come up to Forward for Ironbound, which runs January 29th through February 15th of 2026. Marcy, Jake, thank you. It is always a joy for me to just listen to your brains work.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate
Likewise.
it.
For both of you.
And we'll say that is all for this episode of Theater Forward, a conversation about theater in Wisconsin, the Midwest, and America. Thank you all for joining us. I am Jen Uphoff-Gray. Our podcast is produced by Scott Hayden. You can follow us or share your thoughts on Facebook at Theater Forward, as always spelled with an ER. And if you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. We are so grateful to have you listening, and we will be back soon for another Theater Forward conversation.